anyway, hate to be a little drum, but I just, I've been watching a couple of news articles this weekend and last night, and the country's really getting crazier and crazier. So, and I'm saying the same thing in hopes to get people's attention, because we need to have a united middle class. A united and healthy middle class creates a strong America. And you have to listen to who wants that to happen and has ways of making it happen. And then we need to vote people in and vote people out according to their strengths or weaknesses. And it's going to take some time to get finally a handle over our political system, because we have no handle over this. And the founding fathers gave us this. We owe it to them. They weren't perfect people, but and they were elites, but they at least saw that this country, the middle class of this country, needs to run the important issues directed by our politicians. And just like you have a head of a company and you have the crew of a company, if that's not going right in a company, one or the other, that company goes out, right? Well, this country is much, obviously a whole different scenario, but it matches a bit, because we're on the way to communism right now, or socialism, and there's just no getting around that fact that either we come together and we pull together and we look out for our neighbors and we talk to each other and we do those things that our founding fathers gave us the freedom to do, and or we don't have a society anymore. Anyway, we're going to start getting this down. I'm still working on some lighting. Barbie's moving to California, so she's going to be producer Barbie remote. But I think we might be able to get her on camera this way. So with all of that said, you guys have a great weekend. Say hi to each other. Go out and say hi to somebody. Just wave at them, man. Start that way. Just wave at them. Every time you see them, wave at them. You don't know them. And then you'll see the reaction change, evolve. You'll see the body language evolve. Go out and say hi to a couple of people today. Anyway, love you guys. Thanks for being here.
Hello, how you doing? Duff here with Insights and Straight Talk. I'm playing around, as you guys know. Max, that's not our normal intro. Well, it's not our everyday intro. I usually match it up. I say Max because you'll meet him in a minute. He and I we're having a great conversation in the back, and I'm like, okay, we got to quit talking, man. We want this stuff on the show, and the audience is going to get a little irritated. My God, we already have 55 people here. Okay, you're setting some standard here, Max. They're coming in a little quick. They're coming in hot. So today's going to be a fun time, because for me, one, I love his last name. I'll try it in a second here, but it's a very cool name, and he even told me he's been mispronouncing it for, I don't know, what'd you say, like 50 years or something, until your brother came over a couple of weeks ago. So I don't feel so bad when I screw up everybody's name now. It's a little more fun. He's a podcaster himself, so he and I might be arm wrestling a little bit for words. I don't think either of us are shy in the language department or talking department. Would you agree? Raise your hand there in the green room, Max, if you agree with that. There it is. So he's a veteran. He served a number of years in the Navy, 3, I believe, to be complete. And he lives in Fall River, California, where, if a lot of you know, my dad was a Marine and worked out of Pendleton for that time. And we lived in Fallbrook off of, back when it was mainly avocado trees. And I mean, just surrounded. It was a great place to spend that time in my life. It was awesome. Growing up in the military. Whoa, we got 169 people. Okay, I'm going to make this a short intro, guys, because you guys are like on fire here. 169 people. So you guys are in for a treat. We're going to be talking, you know how much we do on mental health. I was going to say on that intro video, I don't have anything cut for this yet. So I just kind of want to do a general, it's all about the great middle class. And no, Max, not every episode is politics. So I sometimes when we're on to talk about something different, especially in these times, it's kind of crazy right now. It's very crazy right now. Again, it's been very crazy for a long time. But the middle class has been overlooked, ignored, and everything else you can think of. I mean, we're the backbone of the economy, of the industrial part of our country, as well as the economic part. That's why we do this. One of the reasons we do this show, because it's about making you and me better. We got to work and this is what we're talking about today. We got to work on ourselves from inside out. And you all know that, and we're all here to talk about that. With that said, I'm going to bring on my newest, bestest friend in the world, Mac. I was so damn concerned about your last name. I screwed up your first. Max Nijst.
Yes, sir. Perfect.
Woo! Okay, now how did you used to say it before your brother came in?
Well,
older or younger first?
Older brother. So I grew up with hearing Nijst, like a long A version, right? So my brother and his wife came to visit me and my wife last year. And he heard me talking to someone and say my last name. And he said, "No, little brother, you've been saying it wrong." I said, "Well, now for 57 years, I said my name." According to him, he said I was saying it wrong. So, but here's the thing. I've heard both. Yeah. See, and I heard both. I hear both. Right. But he says it's nice. So I'm going to go with my oldest brother, right? My older brother. And
since it's so much easier, I'm going to jump on your coattails and go that way too. So nice. How are you doing? How did you get on the journey that, give us some background. Of course I got into a little bit here, but you're an author, a podcaster, you work with addiction and what that causes, not only in the person, but in the family. And you and I talked about this. It usually affects the whole family.
Absolutely.
No matter if it's just one person in that family that's creating the havoc, let's call it.
Right.
So start with how you got. Some people go all the way back to birth. I'm not saying you have to do that, but where did that start? Where did that journey start? Give us some background. Give us some colors between the layers, my friend. Oh my God, 327 people.
I'm going to say that my journey began right around junior high school, right? Because as a recovering drug addict, alcoholic. Here, I'll put it simply so everybody understands where I'm coming from. So I went to a party when I was 13 and I didn't get home till I was 32. So just imagine right? So experimentation, obviously, in junior high, right? And then as I get into high school, I'm not the greatest student, right? But I did enough so I could play my sports, obviously, like that was important. But once sports were over, it was where's the parties on the weekend? Right? And it's the usual. Started with drinking and marijuana, but as I think my junior year or even sophomore year, experimenting with harder drugs, like just name it, I've done it. And and it's, if I was to be honest, I did not heed the red flags, right? Like especially my senior year when I'm getting ready to graduate, and I'm going out on a Friday night, not coming home till Sunday, or sometimes coming home, but not waking up till Sunday afternoon. Right. And, being one of those guys that where the party's over, but I'm trying to find people to keep going with me. Right. Because I have found other things and even if it was just alcohol. But that moment, where you kind of know something's not right is when mom popped in one morning on a Sunday and she's like, "You're not going to do this, right? You're getting ready to graduate, but this is not going to happen in my house. You sleep all day, right?" And she goes, "I'm giving you 3 choices." And the choices were you work full time, you go to school full time, or you work part-time and you go to school part-time, but you're not going to sit around and do nothing. And, you know, I know what you're doing. So I'm like, all right, I'm thinking to myself, right? Well, lo and behold, I go to the recruiter's office and I sign up for the Navy, right? Because you remember back in the 80s when it was,
Yep.
this is not just a job, it's an adventure. And they would show the
Yes.
fleet, you know, right? So
Oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
And Top Gun
See the world. Oh,
Right,
Top
it
Gun.
came
That's
out,
right
right?
there too. That's that Miramar's right by you in Fallbrook too. You ever
I'm
seen
about
the
an
jets?
hour and a half away from there. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sometimes we see them. Most of the aircraft we see are from Pendleton. Like you said, I live 5 minutes from the back gate. So a lot of times we just see the helicopters and the stuff that, you know, but I said, okay, I'm going to be a pilot, right?
Hang on.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question about that? Because me and you are totally aligned right here. I mean,
Right.
we're like brothers from another mother, man.
That's
We're
right.
living, you know, the mirrors of each other. Have you ever heard of Green Beach or White Beach along the coast of is it the 405 or the 5 there? Where there's all that military land, and that you'll see tanks go, and they come in from ships. Do you know where I'm talking about? Where Nixon's old place was, just outside of San Clemente.
Correct, right? And if you keep going down south, right, then you'll see like Pendleton, and you'll see that portion of the beach. I used to work 2 hours from home, so I would travel the 5 and see that all the time, right? Where they're dropping people off, and right, they're dropping people off. Oh, nice. So they're either dropping people on helicopters, or you see the ships out on the ocean, you know, doing their thing, right? And I'm very familiar with it.
Just one more quick story. That's the reason I brought it up. So my mom you remember Nixon during his days? You and I are roughly, I mean, you look a lot younger than me, but I think we're roughly in the same age. I think you're a few years younger than me. But anyway, my mom you remember he had the house up on the cliffs there that overlooked, I always thought it was Green Beach, but it was White Beach.
Right.
We had for whatever reason, my dad was a guard, you know, that stood outside the White House.
Right.
And, you know, you see those Marines that they, you know, very formal. My dad was him, and my mom was an interior designer while we lived in Fallbrook. And she designed the inside of that home for him. And so we got to hang out on the beach. So we'd bring like a motorhome in, and we'd hang out for the weekend. And they'd literally be doing maneuvers where those ships would come in, drop people off, and they'd storm the beach right by us.
Right.
I mean, literally, we were playing music as stuff was coming in. It was, we were, my sister and I were not even quite teenagers yet. I think we were like 12-ish, somewhere in there. Oh my God, we'd go out and see, what are the meals? The MRIs? No, that's
the MREs.
MREs. We'd find them out there, and we'd have sex. Oh, it was a very rare experience for kids, right? It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. But anyway, I'll go on with your story. We got questions pouring in like nuts. Go ahead.
Awesome. So I actually was on a ship that did that dropping off the Marines and stuff.
Really?
So I was on what they call a amphibious assault ship, right? Which we were fully loaded. There was more Marines and naval personnel. There's helicopters, tanks, all that. Yeah, I've been a part of those drills. I got to say that was the fun part of that adventure, right? But so anyway, I get through high school. I signed up for the Navy because I'm thinking to myself, like, if I don't change my ways, I knew I was going down the wrong path.
That's impressive for that young of an age, to be honest with you, because I had no clue. I kept going. I mean, I was doing all the things you're talking about, but I never had my mom. I believe that you had as a mom. And I think that's kind of critical. Or I assume that was part of your able to get back out of that, because your high school years, you're very exposed. You're very influenced. And all that stuff, and you just fall. A lot of people I know just fall into that stuff, and
Right.
takes a lot longer to recover.
Right. And well, that was my brother and I when we were on two opposite ends of the spectrum. But I was the kind of guy in high school, right, where I could hang out with him and his party buddies, right, or the stoners as they would call them. And but yet I can go to and hang out with all the jocks and everybody else, right? But
that's what I did.
It didn't really stop. So it did in boot camp, right? And
sure,
so,
you have to, right? I mean,
right.
It has
well,
to.
The drinking didn't, because well, in San Diego, the 18 was if you went on base, you could drink, right? So
that's true.
Like,
that's true.
After graduation, I remember me and a few buddies, we drank, and I had duty that night, and I remember just going, "Oh, this is right." But you're 18, like, "Oh, I'll get over this," right?
Oh yeah, I could do this.
But so, I'm thinking to myself, like, I need discipline, right? But because if I keep hanging out with my friends, right, they're all going to college, most of them. I'm not a college guy at the time, right? I'm not a good student, right? Barely graduated high school. So I graduate boot camp. I go, well, this is when I knew this is really not going to stop, right? So after boot camp, I go to Treasure Island, which is in San Francisco for school. But here's what happens, right? So I get there the first day, I get to we check in, and, we meet the guy who's in charge of our class, and he says, okay, you can go into town. It's Fleet Week. So during Fleet Week at that time, all the officers stay on the ships and do tours for the civilians. And all of us enlisted guys were allowed to go in town and go to the pier. And lo and behold, my first experience of Navy life is having a free concert from Stevie Ray Vaughan and all the beer we could drink.
Dude.
Right?
Oh my gosh.
Right. So I'm thinking, well, if this is Navy life, like, I'm in for this adventure, right? Like, I'm all in. 20 years, here I come, right?
Right.
But I should have known, right? I mean, the drinking didn't cease. And so I get my orders after school, and this is the funniest thing, right? So they give you this thing called a dream sheet, and there's like this, they can't guarantee what you want, but we want to see where you would like to go. So I put like Spain, Portugal. I think the closest to the States I put was Hawaii, right? So I graduate. I actually do really good in school there. I did top 5% of my class. I get my orders, and it's Long Beach, California, which was 20 minutes from my home.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I remember calling my mom, and I said, hey, Mom, don't pack my room up, because she was going to use it as her like office, whatever, craft room. And she goes, what do you mean? I said, I got stationed in Long Beach. And she goes, what happened to your adventure? I was like, right. So what did that do? That landed me right back home. And just because I was in the military, it didn't stop me from doing what I was doing. I actually continue where I left off. And to be honest, I got in trouble for testing positive for cocaine. I got 45 days extra duty, 45 days restriction to the ship, right? And if I look back, that's where I knew I had the ism or the addiction gene in my, and it didn't stop me, right? Until I met now is my ex-wife. I met her. And then we found out we were having our first child, right? Which then I knew I had to stop. I didn't stop drinking, of course, right? I figure if I can stop everything else, I don't need to stop drinking. But I even mellowed out on that, right? And long story short, because I could be here for hours, right? We have 3 kids together. The addiction towards the end, because our marriage was starting to fall apart, started to kick back in, right? First, it was a lot of drinking. And then as the divorce and everything went through, I found myself finding these old friends, right, that were doing, right? And about this time, I had been working for, a Fortune 500 company, suit and tie kind of guy working for Xerox. I lose my job after being with them for 8 years because my addiction is starting to affect every aspect of my life. And I remember I move in with my mom after the divorce is final.
That's hard.
And And this is where I can see where not having the resources or anybody to go like, I need help, right? Like my mom was an older mother at that time. She'd already done, my brother was doing his first term in prison at the time. And, all my uncles and stuff were all, busy with their, I felt like I didn't have anyone because my dad passed away when I was young. So I didn't have really a father figure. I mean, I had a stepdad, but he had passed away. So where I'm leading to this is the addiction is starting to like really get bad, right? And not only did I go back to all the old things I was doing, then I get introduced to methamphetamine enters my life, and I'll tell you why.
Nasty.
Right. So after the divorce, right, the only thing holding myself together at the time was my children, right? Every weekend I would get my kids. So it was like, everybody stay away. I have my kids. I'm not going to be available, blah, blah, blah. Right. I would hang out with my kids. And then one day I get home from work and I hear there's a message on the machine. And so I click the message and it's my ex. She's saying, hey, this is so-and-so, call me. And then the area code was 202 or something that you and I know, we would have went like, this is not a California zip code. Like,
yeah, right. Exactly.
Right. And then in the pit of my stomach, I knew this was not going to be a good call. Yeah. So I gave her a call back and I said, hey, where are you? And she said, I took the kids. I moved to Nebraska and I'm not coming back. Oh, wow. And I can't even explain. I still get it. You know what I mean? I think about that time, like the only thing holding me together at that time. And I think I was in my late 20s, mid to late 20s was them. And I just remember dropping the phone and I couldn't even speak. Right. And I'm just like, anyway, this was the first time my mom ever kind of like sided with any of her kids. She usually stayed out of like, her kids' relationship business, but she's like, are you happy? Sure. Like she was angry. Like, so I find out she's moved to Nebraska. Like I said, my brother at the time had just got out of doing his first term in prison. So this is going to be kind of funny because I still laugh about it. Right. So I didn't want my friends to know that I lived with my mom, but she had this huge garage, right? Like you could fit 4 cars in it. And so what I did was turn half of it into a room. Like
wait a minute. Whoa, wait a minute. Whoa. Your mom has a garage that can take 4 cars in it?
It literally could take maybe 3 or 4, right? It was huge. I think it was added on by the previous owner, but she was renting. But anyway, she said,
go ahead. Gotcha.
Right. I turned it into a room, but as I was cleaning this up to prepare to make this into a room, right, I'm cleaning up the garage and I find what my brother had stashed was a spoon and a needle. Right. And I knew, and something in my head said, you're going to, because I started doing meth at the time, but I was only snorting it. Right. And I don't even think
that was speedball, right? That's what you're.
Well, no, I was just snorting it. No, speedball is shooting it, right? So a speedball back in the day was considered you'd shoot heroin and then you would shoot cocaine. I don't know what they call. I don't like heroin. I got very sick when I tried it the second time. I never liked it.
I was afraid to do that.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm afraid that if I would have liked it, that I might not even be here having this conversation because more is better for that. But anyway, I find this and I know what he's doing. It clicks why he was acting so weird when I've seen him before, right? So what I do is I finish the room and I plan this whole thing where there was one door you can get into my room. There was a coffee table, my bed in the corner, a dresser, right? Just a little room.
Yeah.
So on the coffee table, like I said, one way in, one way out. So when he comes in, he's going to see that I have a 1/4 ounce of methamphetamine, the needle on one side and the spoon on the other. And because of the pain I was feeling and didn't know how, and this is just me being true, like I didn't know how to handle not having my kids, right? Or not having anyone right? I didn't think about therapy. I didn't think about any of that because I'm just like, I feel so, but I go, I'm going to do what he's doing. And he comes in one night, I invite him in, I close the door behind me and I stand between me and the door, him and the door. And he looks down and you could just see the look on his face. And he's just like, this ain't going to happen. Right. Like, but for 2 hours, we went back and forth. You're going to teach me how to do that. No, I'm not. Yeah, you are. No, I'm not. You know, finally I said, look, there's 2 ways you get out of this room. You show me how to do that, or you have to beat me up. And you know, that ain't going to happen. And he just looked at me with like this, and I'll never forget. It was like, you know, you're a jerk. Like, you're going to make me do this, but I don't want you going out finding somebody else like who may hurt you. Right. And so he did that night. That was the first time I did methamphetamine intravenously. And it was like, I had found my heaven. Like, I am not going to feel any pain. You know, it's like, it was even better than the first drink, right? Where you get that warm fuzzy going. And, but part of me at the same time knew like, this is the beginning of the end. Right. But what would happen is I had never been in trouble.
How old were you at this time?
I want to say I was about 26 or 27.
Still in your okay. Oh,
I'm still in my 20s, right? Because we got married. I was 20 when I got married. She was 18. I had my son at 21, and then you're right. So what would happen is it started that like downward spiral, like on like the speed, the bullet train in Japan, right? Like slickety split. Because at that time it was like I just didn't know what to do, how to do it. And I didn't want to feel the pain of not having my, knowing my kids were in a whole different state. So that escalated very quickly where I would lose work. I mean, it got so bad, Rod, that I remember walking onto a job site. My brother would put me to work, right? He was a carpenter, right? And he would get these side jobs and he would let me. I showed up one day and he took one look at me and he said, just give me the shovel. He goes, I'm going to give you $50. You're embarrassing me. Get out. Like, you're done today. Like, that's embarrassing when I think about it, that my own brother would say, like, you're embarrassing me, right? And
he was actually a partier.
No, this was my older brother. So there's 7 of us. So the brother I'm speaking of that helped me.
Okay. I didn't know that.
So I have an older brother, right? So my mom and dad were married previously before they met each other, but I have 7 older brothers and siblings from my mom and her previous marriage. So 5 older siblings. And then my dad was married before he met my mom. And I have the older brother that told me how to say my name correctly from my dad's first marriage. Right. And it just like, I can't even, like, I was on a death wish, put it this way. I was committing suicide on the installment plan because I couldn't drink enough. I couldn't do enough drugs, but I was too chicken to just go, I'm going to end it all. Right. And as I realized later, right, like that's what I was doing. And I couldn't stop myself. Right. From never being in trouble to all of a sudden it starts with, tickets for this or that. Like, I'm going to jail for 3 days because I didn't do this. And now it's 30 day violation. So 16, I go through the whole gamut in Orange County. Okay. And try and go fast forward, right? My drug use is just off the charts, right? I'm doing things I swore I would never do. So what happened, let's go back a little bit, right? So she leaves, right? And then 9 months later, and this is how bad it got. She gives me a call and says, I'm coming back to Orange County. The kids want to see you, right? But I'm telling you, when she saw me last, I had probably lost another 15 to 20 pounds. Like, I am doing meth every day I can, sometimes every day, and so I asked a friend, I said, hey, can I borrow your car? I'm going to go. My kids are coming home. I want to go see. I don't want to miss it. And it was during the summer. And I remember it was very hot that summer. I park out in front of their house. She's married to a new guy at this time. I park out front and I put the seat back. I fall asleep and I wake up to a knock on the window.
Oh no.
So you imagine the scene, right? I put my seat up. I'm sweating profusely. I look out the passenger side and there's my ex-wife with the 3 of my kids. And she's got this look. She doesn't know if she wants to cry or be disgusted. And, anyway, she invites me in. She tells her husband at the time, hey, he's going to spend the night because I want him to spend time with the kids. I got to tell you, that night would be the last time I would see the kids for like 7 to 9 years. Because what happened was, I remember that guilt and the shame kicked in so bad. I said, my kids will never see me like this. Right. But the whole time I'm going to see if you go back, my dad and mom divorced when I was younger and I never saw my dad. Right. For 5, 6, 7 years until I was about 10. He came back to visit. Right. And makes this promise, I'll be back for your birthday, because his job took him overseas. So, and at the time he was married to a Filipino lady and lived in the Philippines. So he said, I got to go home, but I'll be back. Promise. Like that's the promise. So I remember, man, my 11-year birthday came and went. No dad. April comes. I get the word that my dad dies of a massive heart attack at 55. Right. So as an 11-year-old kid, I was angry, right? I didn't get sad. My brother got sad. Everybody sat around me and I walked out the house and I'm like, how dare he break his promise, right? So as I look back, as you and I know, I do the work and I figure out what's the root. That's one of the root problems where I drank and used drugs at my dad. I drank and used drugs at my mom. Like it was their fault, like all, you know what I mean? And until I realized like they knew how to do what they did with the best they could, wasn't their fault, but that drove my behavior for years. Right. Like,
yep.
And so fast forward, I have these kids and I always swore I would never be like my dad. And I ended up being like my dad 10 times worse. Right. Because I lived in the same city as them for years, and I would either wait till late at night because I was still getting drunk and I was still getting high, or I'd wait till early morning after they went to school because I swore they would never see me like that ever again. After that day, they saw me. And, as I was saying, I'm getting in more and more trouble. I get my first possession charge, my first felony, which today it would be a slap on the hand, as things have changed over the years, but yet I still have a felony, right? And I have done nothing this judge that I had seen for years ever done. I've never done anything he asked of me, right? I always went on the run, or no, I'm not going to do that, right? So I was on Prop 36. That's what they called it back then, which is kind of like what drug court is now, right?
Right. It is.
And I remember going back to that court, right? I'm doing a 6-month violation. And normally in Orange County back in those days, you would do 4 months with good time. That means if you didn't get in trouble, you did what you're supposed to. And I remember coming to him the first time he just said, I don't even want to see you. Like, I'll see you next month or whatever. I'm like, God, right. This is how my family must be feeling. Right. Yeah. And so the next time I see him, he's like, I'm not letting you go walk the streets. One, you've done nothing I've asked of you ever. And I said, well, what about the second chance? I see people on Prop 30, they get to go back. He goes, well, they didn't go on the run. That's why they get a second chance. The day you abscond from probation is you blow that chance. So he goes, I will keep you here as long as I need to. One, either you're going to take a bus and you're going up to prison, or 2, I find you a place and that's the only reason you leave. So I'm literally
like a halfway house, you mean?
Right. Like treatment or sober living. Right. So I finally, a week shy of 6 months, they find me a place, right? Because the previous the previous visits to court, right? I argue with them. Oh, you don't want to send me there, Your Honor, right? Because I'll leave. Or you don't want to send me there, Your Honor, because I'll have a new charge. Because if they do that, right, I'm going to end up hitting someone and I'll be back here. But they found this place was kind of like, it was sober living, but they did some treatment stuff. And he goes, but you're going there for a year. And if you slip up 1 millimeter, I'm sending you to prison. And I'm like, almost raised my hand again to go like, hey, I got a question, you know, but I kept my hand down. I kept my mouth shut. And I'm like, okay, I'll do this.
Smart move.
Right. But did I stay sober? So absolutely not. Right. Because when I first got there, it was all about like, I'm going to look good so I can get the probation and everybody off my back. Well, 4 relapses later, and it didn't, you know, I realized after the last relapse, which wasn't even, it was just a 1-day thing. I realized that I'm either going to die doing this or I'm going to prison. Those are my choices. Right.
Right.
And for me, I have a belief in a higher power. I call him God. So it was on a Sunday, right? The house manager came over. He saw the look in my eye and he goes, office now. And he turned around and walked away. So as I'm getting dressed, right? Because I know I have to test. I'm going to test positive. I'm going to prison because they're going to call probation. They're going to kick me out. And I'm done. Well, the director of the facility, this lady named Sue that I had become friends with because I had been there so long, right? At the time, it was like a little over a year. And, you know, she would take me to meetings with her. She, you know, introduced me to her family. I mean, I've been to her home for barbecues and, right, never shows up on a weekend. But this day she decides to show up on a Sunday. So I just got done getting dressed and I hear a knock at the door and I open the door and it's her. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, I looked at her like, what are you doing here? She said, oh, hey, Max, how you doing? She didn't know, right? And I told her before I could come up with some lie, I said, I did it again. And she goes, look, gives me a big hug. I still get emotional over it. And she goes, pack a bag, get in your car, leave for 3 days, come back, test clean, and we'll start over. And I haven't used since. 22 years later, I kept my promise because that when he left and before she came, I was in the bathroom and I said one of those, like, please, God, help me. I said, if you keep me sober, God, I promise you, I will do the work to stay sober no matter what happens. And like, I've kept that promise for 22 years. And so I take off, right? And I remember, so my sobriety date should be my original date, which was 9/24 of 2002, right? But it should have been 9/24 2003. But after leaving there, I'm thinking to myself, okay, I got to figure this out, right? I went to a motel for the night, got searched by the police. Luckily, I had, you know, it was me and a friend. And then the next night, a friend of mine who had just left, who I became good friends with, said, hey, why don't you come stay with me and my fiance? We'll feed you. And when you get up in the morning, you can go back. So that was on 9/26. I show up at his house. They feed me. And this is for me.
Oh, wow. 9/26. You mean like 4 days ago was an anniversary for you?
No, 9/27. But I'll let you. Yeah, 3 days ago. So I show up at his house, his apartment. They feed me, right? So here's one of those moments you'll never forget, right? So I'm laying on the couch. It's almost midnight. It's like 5 minutes till, and they go to the room. Lights are off. I'm starting to fall asleep finally, right? And I see the light go on, right? And I hear the door open. He comes out and he's like, hey, Max, get up. I'm like, what? He goes, get on your knees, right? And you got to imagine. So my head is still spinning from the drugs, right? I said, whoa, time out, bro. I said, your fiance is that way. And he's like, this is where my name became Idiot my first year sobriety. No, idiot. Like, we're going to sit here. We're going to pray together. As you know, we're going to say the 3rd and 7th-step prayer, and I'm going to pray for you. And then, so by the time we were done doing that, and he was the first man that ever did that with me, it was 5 minutes after 12, right? New day, 9/27 of 2003 has been my sobriety date ever since. That's why I count that as my date, right? So I go back and I start over, and you know what I mean? And I go through all the emotions, right? I remember going back, my sponsor, only direction he gave me at the time was, you're going to meetings, but you're not sharing for the first 30 days because you got nothing to share. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I got everything to share. You no, right? I
All
remember
the
sitting there.
negative side.
Yeah, right. So I remember sitting in a meeting with him one time, and like the first few weeks or a couple of weeks, and they picked on me to share because I went back to the same meetings, right? Which I did not want to do, but I did. I followed his suggestion, and he's like, he would do this, and like they look at him, and he goes, he's got nothing to share right now. I'm like, God, you're mean, bro. Like you're mean, you know.
You're dying to talk, aren't you, man?
Right. And then I remember one time where I knew I needed this was I was sitting in a meeting and there's people across from us and they were whispering back and forth to each other. Right. And I look at them and I'm hitting him with my elbow. I go, look, they're talking smack over there. And he's all, what? I go, look, man. He just looked at me and he said, Max, you're not that important.
Yeah.
No one's talking smack about you. Just shut
what
up
I
and
love
listen.
about that program. That's what I love about that program, man. Get you out of your head. Hey, real quick question.
Yes, sir.
We have right now, we're at 41 minutes,
Okay.
which is great. We got a lot of questions. Unfortunately, today I normally ask people, do you have a hard stop? Because I only try and do one show a day. But this closes down today. I have to be out of here at 2:45. So I just want to manage that a little bit. Don't change what you're doing. I'm just keep that in mind. So right now it is, what time is it? It's 2:20. So let's call it 10. We got about 25 minutes and we got about 15 questions here right now. So let's just keep that in our heads as we kind of, because I don't want to not, I wish I would have done this a little bit earlier. We have 330 people on right now, and there's questions coming out like crazy because this is not a unique problem, as you and I both know. 70% of humans deal with some sort of mental illness, and there's a lot of questions about that. And about there's some people here that are asking, after 20 years of sobriety, how do you handle the triggers that come up even after 20 years? And I know that even after 20 years, there's those after, as long as you've got support, it becomes a little easier, but triggers are all along the way. Before we get into that, though, the James Show, which they're kind of a regular attender now, which is interesting, another podcast. Wow, Max's story is truly inspiring. Thank you for sharing this journey. So how about that, huh?
Thank you. I'll skip. So I get sober, right? And I make that promise. And of course, I go through working the steps all over and really diving into them. And because the first time, I did it, as you know what they say in the book, half measures. Like I will, especially that 4-step, right? I told my sponsor, like, I'm not
oh my God,
in my head, right? Like I will tell him this, but I'm not telling him that, right? Which led me to believe like I was keeping secrets. That's why I got high again. That's why I got drunk again.
Yep.
And so now I'm sober and I'll move forward as much as I can. I finally leave that place right after 16 months. I'm doing well. I'm off probation, right? But now here's where life challenges happen. And as I'm trying to navigate as they say, productive member in society, right? I'm paying my child support again. I'm paying all, I'm doing all the things, I'm working. So I'll fast forward, right? Like, because honestly, the first 2 to 3 years of my sobriety, I was in meetings every day, like twice a day, 7 days a week. I followed that. I'm not saying that anybody in recovery has to do this, but it was what I needed to do to build my foundation leading up, like what you're talking about. So the triggers hit, I don't go, back to where I was before. And so I did that, I've been through some relationships, but here's what might help people. So at 5 years sober, I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to. I'm going to meetings. I'm working. I have a pretty decent job. I'm seeing my kids again. Nice. And I'll go back and tell a story about that in just a minute, but everything's good, right? But I'm waking up, with that like sense of impending doom every day. I'm barely making it through work. I'm barely making it. And I'm like, man, like I was coming home. I was dating, you know, I had a girlfriend. We had our own apartment. And I remember I would come home from work and I would go in the room, you darken it and just tell her, come get me for dinner. And she was looking at me like, what's going on? Are you like, people were wondering if I was getting high again or drinking again.
Right.
I'm like, absolutely not. But I didn't want to live. Like I did what I knew I had to do. I went and sat with my sponsor. I went to his office and I like told him what was going on. And of course, you know, the wise man that he is, he grabs a book and he goes to that page and he says, oh yeah, even alcoholics seek outside help. You might want to talk to your doctor, you know, or go see. And I'm like, right. So I go to my doctor at the time. He goes, yeah, it sets it up a referral for a psychiatrist. And in talking to the psychiatrist, after she finds my history, she goes, you know, you had been doing so much of this meth, especially intravenously. You have zapped all your feel-good neurons in your brain, right? It just took time for your brain to go, I'm not getting it anymore, right? And
Right.
so, you know, they put me on medication. The first one didn't work, actually made me worse. The second one was great for 10 years. It worked. And until like 5 years ago, I finally was like, I wasn't depressed, but I was like, I wasn't happy, but I wasn't, as my family would say, you're just there. I'm like, okay. Right. So I went to my doctor at the VA and said, look, it's not working. I want to come off it. So I did it right. So I've been off my depression medications for 5 years now. And through, you know, good diet, exercise, I feel 10 times better. I don't need to go back. So that journey leads me into, right, going, man, like a crazy ride over the years, right? At, you know, so when I'm getting ready to turn 13 years sober, and my older sister passes of Parkinson's, right? 3 days after I turned 13. And I'm like, okay. And she was one of my sisters, you know, that I always had my back no matter what, whether I was doing good or bad. She was always that one, like, tell everybody else, quit picking on them, right? So that was a blow. And I was with my ex-fiance at the time, 8 months. We were on our way to Minnesota when I'm sitting in a diner at Denny's in Denver, Colorado. And I get the call that my younger brother that I was telling you about, who actually got sober around the same time. So he's about 8 years sober at the time. I get a call from my oldest brother and says, our brother's gone. I'm like, what are you talking about,
dude?
And I'm like, but if you knew my brother, it was like, I thought he went on a trip, right? Like he's very like spontaneous or impulsive. Like he'd take his kid, like, I'm not going to work for the next, we're going camping with his family. Right. I'm like, okay. And then he gives me the news that my brother hung himself. And so I lose it right in the middle of
kids. Did he have kids?
Had a daughter. He has a daughter who's doing great, who just got a full scholarship to Colorado State.
Awesome. Great campus.
Right. But so that happened. And then I come home, right? I as soon as I get back to Minnesota, I take a flight the next morning back home to be with my family and see my mom. And my mom's just heartbroken. She just lost 2 kids.
Yeah,
and right. And I had to watch my mom literally die of a broken heart. Right. So when I was here, every Monday night I would spend it. We put her into assisted living, right? Because she was living all by herself, like hours from everybody, you know, pretty much. And we put her in a central place where family could be with her. And I would lose my mom on that Thanksgiving Day that year. Wow. And then I put my youngest daughter into treatment for the first time. And it's just, and then as recent as 6 years ago now, we would lose a granddaughter. My wife and I would lose a granddaughter at 3 months and a day old. I'm on my way back to work and I get a call that my son almost died of a massive stroke. And so I literally had to watch a granddaughter get put on life support. I get to the hospital and I'm in the room when they're putting my son on life support, right? Because of his addictive behavior and the choices he made. And so to kind of lead, so all that, right? Not once did I think about, and this is the truth, I didn't think about using, I didn't think about getting drunk. I did think about escape, right? Because it's like, how can I do this? Because I made a promise. Like, that was always in my head. I'm not going to go backwards, but how can I escape these feelings, right? And but what I did is I dove into the meetings, right? I surrounded myself with people, and that's how I've controlled the triggers over the years. And I've gone back to school. Matter of fact, on my way to Minnesota, I finished my bachelor's degree in psychology after finding out my brother had taken his life. I've been a certified, addiction counselor for the last almost 16 years. So what I did is, not only stayed active in the meetings, but I work in the field and try to help. And like Ron and I were talking about, like, I'm a big proponent in involving the family in treatment because everybody gets affected, right? And here's how I can put it. This will explain it for those who are going to ask me. And I'll answer your question, Jack, in just a second, because, but
yeah, we've got a couple of them that are a little out of place. I'm trying to move them in the right spot, but there's PTSD and what you're talking about. I mean, the drugs are the escape. Like you said, I just don't want to feel anymore. I don't want to feel what I feel, what's going through my head all the time, right?
Right. And so what happened, I was working at a treatment center, Hoag Hospital here in Orange County. You probably know about it, Ron.
Oh, yeah, I know it. Yeah.
And they have a family week, right? And so I was working with one of these kids, and the dad, big guy, right? Like, I'm talking big, and he was a cop, right? And he pulls me aside and he's looking at me. He's like, Max, he goes, like, why can't my son just say no? So I sat there for a minute and I think about it. I go, I want you to imagine this. I go, you're a big dude. Like, and as I'm looking up, right, I'm looking up at him. I go, you're a big dude. I said, I want you to go to the train station, Amtrak, over there in Fullerton. I go, I want you to stand in front of a train, let it come at you at 5 miles an hour, put your hand out and try to stop it. And he goes, well, eventually it's going to run me over because it's much bigger, right? And it's more powerful. And I said, so imagine your son's addiction is the bullet train in Japan coming at you full speed, right? And he went,
great example.
No one's ever put it to me that way. I get it now, right? Like, so that's why I always, when working, if they allow me, I always tell the family, look, you're in recovery too. You may not drink or touch drugs, but I go, you're in recovery because your loved one has put you through the ringer. Did I ever feel like giving up? I wouldn't say.
We're gonna go back to some other questions. I'm trying to skip over a couple so we could stay in this lane,
right,
which is related to PTSD and depression and so forth. But
absolutely,
I'm gonna keep them kind of together. You hear me?
Right. So I think being in the field and actually staying active, right, in my recovery, like, gives me, and I've learned over the years, as a counselor that, right, there's no one way that someone can get clean and sober. I used to be that guy, right? Because I'm love AA and I love what it's done for me. And I used to be that counselor that said, oh, you can't do the stuff, you're going to die and I can't work with you. Oh my God. But I have learned over the years, especially the last, 10 years, right, with the fentanyl crisis and stuff like that. And right,
that's another level, man. That's another
exactly level. So I've learned to work and meet people where they're at, right, and really try to dig and build that connection, right? Because for me, it's all about connection, and I'll explain why. I watch this and I use it as a group that I facilitate. When I facilitate, I'll use this. But I don't know if you,
Max, before you go on, I want to bring this back up because Ronaldo's a big, she's a very good friend of mine. She's a digital creator. I've never met her, but what would you yester? Ronaldo, is that a type, or is it, Max? I don't know the term yester. Is that, what would you see?
I was going to ask. Yeah, I was going to ask what she meant by that. Also,
well, that's why. That's the only reason I cut you off, is so that I could ask her to say that. She's very active. So would you build on that, Ronaldo? Because I want to get your point, because you usually bring up some really good shit. Go ahead.
So it's like over the years, right? Like, always and this may sound selfish, right? But it's not. It's the way I have lasted in the field for 16 years. I always make sure I take care of me first.
Have
It's
to.
right. It's like that oxygen
100%.
analogy in the airplane. If I don't put the oxygen first, there's no way I'm going to help my family or other passengers, because I'm going to end up falling on the floor, right? So what
Yeah.
I've learned is to not only meet them where they're at, but try to figure out what's going to work for them, right? Whether it's smart recovery, 12 steps, the other one, which is on Buddhist beliefs. I forget what it's called, but there, you know what I mean? I said, I always ask them, right? So how I approach life and people I work with is mind, body, and spirit, right? We got to get them all right.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? So when
Yeah.
I mention mind, body, and spirit, they don't go, oh, he's going to throw the 12 steps at me or this or that, right? And it's just, I got to remember it's their recovery and I'm just the guide, right? And
Right.
to answer how I handle my triggers, which, you know, I don't, I say, because I've done the work and I continue to do the work, like triggers, you know, don't bother me as much as they used to. Like I can just look at it and go, okay, here's how I handle it. I use mindfulness, right? I feel the feeling. Where's this coming from? I accept it and then I move on. And breath work has been a big part of my recovery as of late, the last couple years. And, right.
So when you say breath work, I've tried to figure out, sorry, I'm distracted. I'm trying to figure out what Ronaldo's doing. I think she's messing with us. So she's got, what would you yester? And then I asked her to expand on that. And she said mistake. So apparently the word mistake or yester is a mistake. But build on that, Ronaldo. We want to answer your question.
Right.
Help us, sister. Help us here. So I'm gonna hit a couple of these because we're starting to get up against it just a touch, and
Okay.
and we spent a lot of time in your story, which is a great setup. But I want to hear. I mean, you're an author, you're a podcaster, you run this program, you're taking the 12th step to the next level, right? I mean, you know what the 12th step is. So give back, and you're obviously. I don't know if you're specifically a sponsor to someone or some people, but you're doing that same thing in this recovery program. So I don't want to miss any of the flavor in that. And unfortunately, the public library here in Mangum has been very kind to sponsor us. And the only bad side of that is while I'm in this temporary position until they get the upstairs done for me in the studio, kids come in at 3:00. So I got a kind of a hard stop and I got to break this down. So
Gotcha.
I don't want to miss any of that. We got people still more coming on. So the triggers we went through, but do you ever feel like giving up during recovery? We went through that as well. We kind of answered her question along the way, I believe, unless you want to add to that, and then we'll continue on from there. What do you think? Max, what do you think?
I'm just going to answer it for her. Honestly, I had moments of like, oh my God, literally my conversation with God, like, you need to stop. Mm-hmm. Like, let me get through this one first. But no, you threw 3 things at me, right? Like, but to give up, absolutely not. Like, I took that promise, that last relapse, like to heart. I etched it in stone. And what I do is I lean into that stuff. I lean into that suck, as they say, and use it as a learning lesson. What am I going to learn? Yes, it sucks, right? Like I have to watch my mom literally dying of a broken heart. I watch, and I'm not going to get into about my brother, what happened there, but like, there's some things that have happened where I'm just like, okay, how am I going to get through this? You can still feel
it in your voice. You can still hear it in your voice. I know these things that touch. I know exactly. So you're feeling it right now all over again. Right. That's a battle, right?
Absolutely. But here's the thing. This is how I get through those, right? So, and what I remember. So I turned 14 years sober before my mom passes, right? We're sitting together it was about 2 weeks before she passed. We're watching the show together, and she's like rubbing my leg, like a mom would do. And I'm like,
Oh,
look over. I'm like, Mom, are you okay? You need something? And she's just, no, I'm okay. Then she looks at me and she goes, I want to thank you for your 13 years of sobriety. I didn't want to correct her. And I said, what? And she goes, God answered my prayers. And like, that's a gift.
God, we're both going to start crying here.
Right?
Stop it. We're both going to start crying here. I'm like,
that's why I don't give up, right? Because I don't feel like I just don't, right? Because, when I heard that from her, I'm just like, God is great. He's kept me here. I got to help take care of my mom until the day she died. I built relationships again with my family. I get to be on this, show and share my story as a sober man, as a substance abuse counselor, as an author. But when she said, I remember, I'll tell you this, I looked at her and I said, thank you for never stop praying for me. And she goes, I never did. I'm like, yeah, I know, I'm right here with you. And, but that's why I don't give up. Like, I may have hard moments, and I know they're just tough moments, but we know what a bad day for me would to go drink again. And right. Cause I would be no good to anybody. And, my faith is strong because like, even now going through the last year and a half, like some crazy stuff in my life, right. Where right financially and, not by some of it by my choice, some of it like out of my control. But what do I do? Right. I just keep practicing. Like I said, lean into the suck. What do I got to learn from this? What lesson does God want me to learn? So that in turn, like somebody behind me comes and says, hey, I'm going through. And I go, oh, I went through that. Let me tell you what I did. Right. It's kind of like the program, right? Like
it is.
And here's one thing that, I know we're getting close on time, but one thing that I'll tell you keeps me going to answer any of the questions, right? And you'll know it. There's on our, what do you call it? Our programs and stuff, God, I can't even, I'm back. There's a saying that goes like this, which when I heard it the first time after my last relapse, because I didn't hear it before then, someone read it in a meeting and it goes like this: when anyone anywhere cries out for help, let the hand of AA be there. And for that, I'm responsible. I took that to heart. Yeah. And I said, excuse me, everybody. I said, I will, that's the promise I'll give to God. Not only stay sober, but if anyone anywhere says, I need help, I don't care who it is, I'll put my hand out and say, here, this is what I did. Because that's how I can do it. That's the only way I know how to do it, is show them. Or, right, like I said, like working with clients, like I always let them know I'm your guide. This is your deal. But I'm here to help you and I'll be with you. And I always let them know, look, I'm no better than you and I'm no less. We're here together. We're going to do this side by side. And that was another thing I heard over the years was, we don't no one walks behind, no one walks in front. We do this side by side together. And what I was getting at about a video I watched on YouTube, YouTube, was a TED Talk from this British journalist. It was about everything we know about addiction is wrong. It basically is, I think I'm paraphrasing, but at the end, he asks everybody, right after he goes through his 16-minute, I'm like, wow, this is so true, right? And he goes, what do you think the opposite of addiction is? And you could hear the crowd, recovery, sobriety, this. And he said, nope, it's connection. Instead of hating, he said, instead of hating on our addicts, we need to love our addicts, right? And I've done my best to do that for the last at least 10 years of my counseling career, right? And in 22 years, right? Well, I don't know about you. I've gotten in arguments with old timers, right? When someone slips and says, I'm an addict, right? And they can't, oh, you can't be here. And I'll take them outside. And I said, you might've just killed that person, right? Aren't we supposed to be inclusive? Right. And I'm no better than anyone, but I'm like, like, whoa, the tradition. I said, well, instead of running them out, why don't you explain the traditions, why we do certain things, so that they can understand and maybe stay here and learn something. And they would give me this look, like a lot of like, because I'm an old timer. I know better.
The old timers are different. No,
yeah, you know what I mean?
Well, we're kind of starting to become the new old timers, but we're talking about the old timers, not us.
Right. We understand, right? Because I would tell them, you're not a doctor. You can't tell. Yeah, you know what I mean? And I said, I told my sponsor, I go, I want to be different than the old timers of the past, right? Yep. I want to be inclusive. Instead of scaring someone off, I want to make sure that they know that they're welcome. But I'm going to take them aside and explain things to them, right? Like things were done with me. How do I define it personally? So fearless happiness, right? And if you look at my website or my podcast, it's with a Y.
Oh, hey, by the way, great point. And do this quicker than not quicker. In the private chat, all the way to your right, down at the bottom, I think it's located for guests. Type in your website and that I'll copy and paste it into the comments, because you know how it is. Somebody's going to come in an hour or a day or a year and go, well, what's Max meaning by that? And that way they can push straight to you, because if they leave comments, which people leave comments on there, but who knows when somebody may be on there or not. So it's just a lot. There you go. Go ahead. Go on with your story. I'll copy over.
All right. And then
we got about God dang, I wish I would have planned this better. Let's say we got 5 minutes.
Okay. I'll answer that as quickly as possible. So happy and fearless.
And I want you to make sure and leave some time for a nice ending and a wave to your fans here, because there's still 330 people on. We're at an hour and 45 minutes, and there's still 330 people on. Dude, you got a story. Probably want to do this again. Yeah, go on.
I'd love to. But fearless happiness, right? So when you see it, there's an I instead of the Y. So fearless, what it meant, I'm going to do it in two parts. Fearless means, and you probably heard this before, most people have, right, is doing those things that scare you, but doing them anyway, right? Because I used to let fear run my life. But happiness, what I've realized, and there's one exception, but I'll get it. Happiness comes from within, right? Like I have learned that my wife can't make me happy. My work can't make me happy. Money can't make me happy. But the exception is my grandkids. They sure do make me happy and bring joy in my life.
Oh,
right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But, hey, I know we don't have time for this, but you brought it up. So I have two granddaughters. One, I moved here because of one of them. She's going to be 2. Actually, she's going to be 2 today. Her party's at the end of October. But I do a podcast on Saturdays with my older granddaughter, who's 16 years old, high school sweethearts with her parent. She and I do a weekly show.
I love it.
It's awesome. You got to check it out, man. Anyway, go ahead.
I got 12 grandkids now, so I got to stay.
Oh God, you're awesome, dude.
But so what happiness means for me is that I'm not going to look outside of me, you know what I mean, to make me happy. It's that whole, my cup is always overflowing, and I live in gratitude so I can live in purpose, on purpose. That's what happiness means to me.
That's beautiful, dude. That is beautiful. Hey, did I get you're right here, right? This is the website, guys, folks.
Yeah, that's
all spelled right. I copied and pasted it correctly, right?
That's it.
All right. There's one more I want to get back to. I've been skipping around, which is I want to pass this along. Damian Pro, great show, full of wisdom and heart. My God, you and I have been tugging at each other's heartstrings all freaking day, man. It's been hard to hold it back, man.
I still get emotional. I still, I think about things
because there's so much level in the experiences that you impose on other people.
Exactly.
And that's when that comes back up. It's crazy because the program AA is very good at bringing that and answering things you never understood. I want to get into all. There were so many questions I wanted to ask because there's so much to this, and you being what you do, we're gonna have a follow-up on this, I think, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely, I'd be honored.
Me too. Fearless happiness, love that concept. How do you define it personally? Now, we talked about it up here, but and I'm going to skip this PTSD because we just don't have enough here. Anything real quick to comment on that for Jack? I just don't like missing their questions because they're dedicated people here.
And so here, Jack, this is what I would do. If you're really struggling with PTSD, find a therapist who not only does talk therapy, but is good with EMDR therapy.
What's that?
It's called eye movement desensitive, whatever, something with to do with the eye, but I have an ex-client who was an ex-military combat vet from Afghanistan. He said it saved his life and he actually can sleep now. But it's a modality in therapy that they actually have to get certified in. But I heard from therapists and clients that it works wonders.
We'll have to talk more about that. You got 1 minute, 12 seconds, and way past what I should have cut off already. But I'm gonna have to close it down, and pretty soon we're probably gonna have a bunch of kids
coming back. All right.
See all that? There's a virtual reality one here, another big game here, and then these are all games, and then they got a whole nother room upstairs. But to feed the kids, to not get into the things we're talking about right now,
right.
Keep them in that dialed in. But fearless happiness, love the concept. How do you deal with that personally? We didn't quite get into that. You got 1 minute, and then roll into a close. Would you on that? And wave everybody goodbye, and I'll kick you back in the green room. I'm not going to be able to meet you back there because I'm going to have to push out.
That's fine.
But I want to hit these. God,
I think I answered it for Rick, but I'll do it real quick. So fearless means doing the things that scare you and doing them anyway.
That's right. That's where you get bravery.
That's
it doesn't come in reverse,
right?
Courage. It doesn't come in reverse.
Exactly. And happiness, knowing I put a Y in there, means that you make happiness comes from within, right? And I gave this example. There's only one exception, and those are my grandchildren, especially the 2 granddaughters and my grandson that live downstairs, right? They actually bring me much joy and happiness. But what that means for me is that I find happiness in the little things, the big things, the medium things, and mostly in helping others try to overcome whatever challenges they are going through. So if you ever listen to my podcast, it's not just about addiction, but it's people who have overcome challenges. So I share their stories with the world, and that's what brings me fearless happiness.
Yeah, that's beautiful, dude. Thank you very much. Can they get to your podcast off of this website? I know I checked out a couple of, we were talking about them. Was it when bullshit and Botox or something like that?
No, that's on my pod page. You can look up Fearless Happiness, right? Type in Fearless Happiness Podcast. It'll bring you to pod page. I'm on all the major platforms. I even started a YouTube channel. Yeah, I started a YouTube channel this year. So I'm everywhere now, and would love your support, right? And make it grow, because there's some amazing people like Rod out here doing what he's doing. And, thank you for bringing me on here and letting me tell my story. I mean, I could keep going, but I think I touched on the important parts, right? Because all of us are in recovery, whether you're an addict or alcoholic or not. We go through things in life that we have to recover
every day.
All of us have some form of PTSD, right? Some bigger than others.
Yep.
But the one thing I want to answer here that you could all relate to, transformation is a choice, right? We can change. We have to be, like Gandhi says, we need to be the change we want to see in the world, right? And especially of us who have kids and grandkids, like they say, you never know who's watching. We know who's watching. So we have to be the example, right? And I always live like, this is a little mantra I tell myself. I want to be the example of what to do, not what not to do.
There you go, brother. Give everybody a big wave. We are, and I'm going to talk more about you when I get off, but I'm going to throw you in the green room. Leave those green M&M peanuts alone. Okay. That's-
You got it.
Give everybody a big wave. I'll you know what?
Thanks,
Hold on.
everybody.
Before you do that, you're gonna have to do that one more time because I rudely set you up for a dead fall there. What the next show we'll do, we'll do less on the intro and then spend some real time about some of the programs that diving in a little deeper because I would really like to, and there's a bunch of mental questions that I still have questions about that I'm interested in to learn from you. So give everybody a big wave. And next show will be like the second half of this one. Do you agree with that, Max?
I agree. That's why I'm starting my own private practice to help people who are done with treatment, right? That need that extra support. So we can talk about that.
We got a lot to talk about. Give everybody a big wave, brother.
All right, everybody. That my bad shoulder. There we go. I need help with it.
All right. Hey, guys, as promised, guys and ladies and men and whoever else or whatever else, we're coming up on an hour and 20 minutes now, and I think it's gone extremely well. Just as promised, I really wish Ronaldo would have come back on because she always has such great insights. And as you know, this show is called Insights and Straight Talk. I'm your host, Rod Duff, and I'm out.
Before you leave, if you'd like to watch another one of the podcasts, click the first link in the description. We love having you here and we appreciate all your support.
And with that, producer Barbie and I are out.